Hello YouTube, this is Bruno. This is my simple raid farm that I built here on the Hemisphere server. It's AFKable, but not self-sustaining. That means you'll need to farm ominous bottles from a dedicated farm, but it will restart automatically a new raid after the last wave has passed and the raid was won. So if you have ominous bottles, you can be in here for quite a long time. It produces about 700 emeralds and redstone per hour, along with 80 totems, and can be built in 90 minutes, including the storage system here. Now, the raids of this farm are puny compared to the stacking raid farms that we used to have in older Minecraft versions, but 80 totems go a long way, and 700 emeralds will buy you quite a lot of stuff if you have cured your villagers. For witch drops, especially redstone, you'll probably want to build a witch farm in 121 with the buffed redstone drops. I will link two different witch farm designs in the description. One very simple one and another slightly more complicated one with looting. What you really get from this farm is a ton of totems of undying, which I think are very valuable. And you will also get a decent amount of emeralds. Okay, so we had to press reset on raid farms as the changed raid mechanics in 121 broke pretty much all raid farms that I know. And while I have seen two new raid designs, one by Nashs and one by Works, I wasn't happy because they feel pretty complicated. And on the other hand, I saw some raid farms where you can dig a hole in the ground or you can just start a raid manually. So what I wanted was a very simple farm that you can build early in survival world with my main focus of getting some totems of undying. But I wanted it to be fully AFKable and not one where you have to start raids manually. I also wanted it to be server safe. When using an armor stand, there should be a replacement system in case the armor stand breaks, and it should be resistant to a few Vexes if possible. And I wanted to make this farm as robust as possible, in the hope that it will continue to work even if Mojang keeps tweaking the raid mechanics. And my farm does all that. It's kind of a barebones farm, trying to use as little as possible of stuff like raid mobs, pathfinding, or specific spawn locations. It does not provide ominous bottles because pillagers in a raid do not drop these. You'll find a lot of ominous bottle farms out there on YouTube. I also built an ominous bottle farm for my Get Good series. I'll link that here once the video is finished. Now be aware that Mojang seems to change the raid mechanics in every new drop nowadays. And this farm is quite new, and by the time you see this, perhaps some of you guys have already improved this farm quite a bit. So please check the description of the video for comments, corrections and improvements. This farm was built and tested in Java 121.4 and in the latest snapshot for 121.5. So how does it work? The farm has basically three components, and each of them I tried to make as simple as possible. One, spawning platforms where the raid waves will spawn with shifting floors and a water stream. Then we have a kill chamber where the player kills the mobs with some logic to restart a raid after the last wave and an armor stand replacement system. And finally some storage system at the end, where I have two shulker box loaders for emeralds and redstones and just a few chests. So the player stands in this spot here and turns on both use continuously with ominous bottles in the offhand and attacks an armor stand with a sweeping edge sword once every 16 game ticks or so. So the raids spawn here on a platform that is basically taken from ENXO4 stacking raid farm. We have some cleverly positioned lava cauldrons, and whenever we get ravagers, they will basically clip into the lava cauldrons and burn. All other mobs fall through the shifting doors into a water stream and are funneled into a drop chute, where they take fall damage, just enough fall damage that the player can one-shot them, which prevents Vexes from spawning. Now as for the other components, so we have one villager here standing on a composter, which defines a village, and the spawning platform is above this villager, because raids will try to spawn in circles around the village center, which is this villager here. And if they can't find it far away, it will spawn the raiders right on top. So they have no choice but to spawn on this spawning platform here and then to fall down. The storage system is very simple. All of the items are collected by hoppers under these slabs and are put into a water stream. I really don't care too much about the witch drops because I have a witch farm. So what I want is tokens, but pretty much half of the drops in these chests here will be tokens of undying. so you will have plenty of tokens from that. And of course I have a shulker box loader for the emeralds and redstone dust, so these I collect. And the remaining drops that are, once these chest silos here are full, will be just put into a fire and destroyed. So the armor stand replacement system, if the armor stand breaks, it will be collected by this hopper and then automatically redispensed. And now that we have a raid victory, no more mobs come in, so this pulse extender will slowly run out. So we have toggled hold use, so we are trying to use continuously, but we won't really drink a bottle unless this trapdoor comes down, and there we go. This is just long enough to start a new raid. And there we go, we have once again more the raid omen, and the next raid will start in 30 seconds. So let's go through the redstone. Here on top we have a very simple clock that causes the shifting floors with 3 redstone ticks delay or 6 game ticks delay between them. So the floors are always shifted back and forth. Of course, soul sand is not a full block, so mobs will sink in a bit, and once the stone block is shifted over, they will fall through. Here the water stream, there's nothing much to tell about that. Here at the bottom we have a tripwire hook. Now I ran into issues when I made the tripwire hook lower. So the tripwire hook is a bit higher than the mobs. And I use these stone cutters so that the drops that might end up here on the stone cutters will be picked up by these hoppers. Anyway, whenever a mob falls through, this comparator will get a signal. Now we subtract a signal of 6. So the highest that we'll have here will be signal 9. And then we have a slow clock here, a fader comparator clock, and whenever this triggered, we will subtract 1 from this pulse extender here, so that it runs in total for about 20 to 25 seconds. Then we take a redstone signal, so once this runs out, and then we have a pulse shortener. We will generate a 16 game tick pulse here, which drops down the trapdoor and also powers this dropper here, where we have ominous bottles. So the player, whenever a new raid is started, the player will get an ominous bottle. So to start the farm, you probably want to take off all your stuff, put it in the chest, grab the armor that you prepared, fill up all of your inventory slots, and then you want in your offhand the ominous bottles, which should be the same ominous bottles as you have in this dropper here. Because this way you will pick up the bottles from the dropper in your offhand. Okay, inventory is full. Go in here, press against this trapdoor here and against this side. Fire up your favorite auto clicker. Periodic attack with the sword. Continuous use, and just look up briefly. And then look at this glass block through the armor stand so that you're hitting the armor stand. Because in case the armor stand breaks, you won't open the inventory of the dispenser this way. And that's it. We've got the raid omen, and the raid will start, and after finishing it will be restarted. A raid in this farm takes something like 5 minutes. So a stack of bottles will last about 5 hours. However, if you play on a laggy server and the armor stand breaks, then you will consume an additional bottle, like so. But this should happen very rarely. So if you start with a stack of bottles in your offhand, then of course you have the bottles in this dropper here. So this basically should last you forever, unless you are on a very laggy server and your armor stand constantly breaks. Now, in single player, I didn't run into any Vex issues. In fact, I ran these farms for tens of hours without any armor and no problems. But if you ever run a raid farm on a multiplayer server, then you probably know that you will encounter Vexes if there are lag spikes. And the reason is, evokers will spawn Vexes after they've been attacked, so if you one-shot them, they don't have a chance to spawn any Vexes. However, if they stand in there for a while, witches will throw healing potions at them, so you can no longer one-shot them, so you have to hit them twice, so they will spawn Vexes. And for some reason during lag spikes the whole timing gets thrown off and this happens. To protect against that, I use diamond armor with protection 4 and mending, of course. As a second effect, I have a strength beacon, which allows me to have a bit more power in my sword. You could add a resistance beacon if you still die to Vexes. That might help as well. And third and last, we use this overclocked beacon here from To Know To Name. So this is a regeneration beacon that is blocked on a 32 game tick clock, or once every 1.6 seconds. So it's 0.8 seconds blocked and 0.8 seconds unblocked. And what this does is that this regeneration beacon will count down to 9 and not just to 13 like normal beacons. And this gives the beacon just a bit more power. You see, a regeneration beacon will exactly heal the amount of damage from starvation, no more and no less. If the player takes additional damage from Vexes, it will never be healed if you just use a normal regeneration beacon. But this overclocked beacon can heal just some damage more over time. So these measures will give you a chance to survive the odd Vex. If you see massive amount of Vexes, you might have to build a Vex suppressor. There are designs there on YouTube. Now, this overclocked beacon is kind of synced to the internal beacon processing in Minecraft and to the server, and unfortunately it can be out of sync. To check that it works, go to your inventory screen and make sure that regeneration counts down to 9. If it doesn't, just flip this lever on and off for a while, and hopefully then the beacon will be synced up correctly. So why do I use such a large spawning area and a water stream below? Let's briefly discuss raid mechanics. So to start a raid, you drink an ominous potion. And I think it doesn't really matter between 2 and 5. The only difference is the enchantments on the equipment of the raiders. So any ominous potion except one will do. Then you'll have to wait 30 seconds until the raid boss bar appears and the first wave slowly spawns. Now it's important we have a raid center, and this is our villager here. So the raid is centered on this X and Z coordinates. And we go straight up and we end up here on our platform. And the game will try to spawn the raid about 46 blocks away, and it will slowly go in more and more. But since all around us is ocean and everything else is spawn proofed, like this beacon here. Now beacons are unspawnable, frog lights are unspawnable, this is why I use a frog light here, and everything else is slapped off. So the only place where the game will find any place to spawn a raid will be this platform here. And the way raid spawning works is that there is a very high probability that the raid wave will spawn here, so that's not a problem. Now, in previous Minecraft versions, we had a lot smaller spawning platforms like ENXO4s, but when I experimented in the current version, 1.21.4, it turned out that a lot of raids would fail with the small platforms. And now raids can spawn a bit farther away from the center, about 8 to 9 blocks. So I made the platform a bit larger, and this seems to be pretty reliable that all of the raids will spawn all of the waves and never fail. Now it's quite possible that you can get by with a smaller platform. There are also tricks to start a raid immediately, but I didn't want to use these tricks because they might get patched out in the next version, who knows. I wanted something that is as future-proof as possible. So the item filters that you see are my copper bulb item filters. I'm probably the only person in the world using them, but I really like them. So the thing is, you can do signal strength independent filters and build them this close over shulker box loaders without any issues. So these filters can pick up almost a full stack of items, which is nice if the items come in bunches. To build this farm, you need to find an ocean that is large enough. And large enough in this case means that you have no land within 6 chunks in either direction. So what you do if you want to know if you can build here, just set your render distance to 6. And this might look different if you use Optifine or something. And make sure that there's only C in the area that is rendered. So if you can't see any land, then your spot is good. I have placed it in the middle of a chunk. So both the villager is in the middle of the chunk, the spawning platform is in the chunk, but I don't think this really matters. It's just important that the spawning platform is over the villager. I don't think this farm is directional or locational, so you should be able to rotate it. So let's see how you get a villager in, because villager transport is sometimes a bit tricky if you don't know how to do it, but really simple if you know how to do it. You just find some village that is close to the ocean where you want to build, and preferably one with a few villagers. Now you have to find a villager that doesn't have a job. Check these guys. This one is a cartographer, so you can break the working block if you like. Now the villager will lose the profession. Now it's just a villager, and now it will be fine. Capture it in a boat, like so. Let's try to boat over to the sea. And let's say this is how you want to build the farm, so the villager needs to go there. Easiest is to place a lily pad, because there you can build below it. And now you want to make a staircase out of temporary blocks to the place where the villager will be. So something like that, and I'm using accurate placement here, which is a carpet feature. So build your little holding cell, like so. And I prefer to use glass, just because it's nicer. But of course you could use anything. There you go. Break these temporary blocks, so there can't be only one way to the composter. And that is like so. So these walls are too high, and the villager will hopefully go in its own here. It has to be day, and it has to be a certain time of the day. Now sometimes it's easier if you have a block underwater like this. You bring the boat here. So let's grab an axe, break the boat, make sure that you don't damage the villager, and push the villager on this block if necessary, and then just wait. And hopefully the villager will accept this workstation and go there. Again, villagers do this only in certain times of day. There we go. Sometimes the pathfinding is also iffy. You might have to place or remove a few blocks. And now the villager is in and can't get out. So just place a roof on that. Now it's completely safe. Make sure you have a lightning rod somewhere in the area. Or if during building you encounter a thunderstorm, sleep so that the villager is not turned into a witch. And that's it. As I said, a barebones farm. Really simple, really easy to build. I hope very robust against changes in the raid mechanics. Now it's quite possible that you can optimize this in several ways, but for me this farm does what I need it to do, and that is give me a ton of totems of undying. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you want to see more content like this. Please subscribe so that you don't miss any of my videos, and see you next time. Bye bye!